Hi, Founder fans. Jason here, and today's founder is William Henry Drayton. William Henry Drayton is fascinating because in the 1760s, when the Stamp Act was passed, well, the Americans called together the Stamp Act Congress in an effort to protest. William Henry Drayton, who at the time was still in his early 20s, was very much against the Stamp Act Congress, and he actually published a paper about how these colonists were going too far. You should just obey your king and parliament and not question quite so much. Now, this worked out really well for him because, again, in his 20s, he was appointed to the governor's council and to the state's court system. So he ended up getting a pretty prestigious place in society as a young man because he was publicly upset at the Stamp Act Congress. Now, things changed over the ensuing decade, and well, by 1774, he too is upset about the intolerable acts. Exactly what they're doing in Massachusetts, the way they're just cutting off the ports, letting Quebec keep French laws, everything they're doing is just intolerable. And slowly but surely, Drayton ends up siding with the Patriots. In fact, he ends up writing a pamphlet called American Claim to Rights. An American Claim to Rights said just that Americans do have certain rights. Hey, I was not happy about the Stamp Act Congress, but you know what? Maybe we do need a Continental Congress now because things have certainly gotten out of hand. Now, Drayton, for his part, he ends up sticking around through the beginning of the Revolution. Once the Revolution starts, he ends up working closely with his friend Arthur Middleton, who himself was an important signer of the Declaration of Independence and member of South Carolina's revolutionary community. In fact, Drayton and Middleton end up creating the South Carolina State Seal at this time, so he fancied himself a bit of an artist. He ends up very quickly, as again, now in his early 30s, becoming Chief Justice of the South Carolina Supreme Court. So he ends up really becoming an important revolutionary, and eventually he is actually elected to the Continental Congress. He goes to the Second Continental Congress and puts his signature on the Articles of Confederation. So he is forever ingrained into history on that particular, no longer being used document, but still very important document to the American founding. Sadly, he is in Philadelphia and he gets typhus and quite suddenly passes away from typhus at just the age of 37. And despite being so young, being my age, he ends up, he had contributed a great amount to the revolutionary cause. Now, there is one story that I'd like to really focus on when it comes to Drayton, and it's what absorbing GA into SC means over to my right here. So, just after independence took place, South Carolina voted unanimously to annex Georgia. For those of you who don't know what annex means, it means to absorb, to assume, to take Georgia and make it part of South Carolina. Now, this little known part of history fascinates me to no end, especially because South Carolina, they just thought Georgia would go for it. I will note that when the revolution starts, Georgia's only about 35 years old. Many of Georgia's founders are still alive. And if not them, their children are most definitely alive. There also are a lot of people from South Carolina who had relocated to Georgia. It was very sparsely populated. I understand it was only about 20 or 30,000, which is not that different from just the city of Philadelphia. So, additionally, because Florida and Spanish-held New Spain was right next door, they thought both economically and militarily this would benefit South Carolina, but even more benefit Georgia. They thought they were being benevolent about this. Now, Georgia was having its own problems during the Revolutionary War, which we're not going to get into quite so deep right now. Suffice to say that when South Carolina decided to absorb Georgia, they sent William Henry Drayton to tell Georgia. And William Henry Drayton spoke on the floor of Georgia's assembly, Revolutionary Assembly, in an effort to convince them to become part of South Carolina. And Georgia pretty much unanimously voted, no, get out of here, no. So he leaves, and then the following summer ends up going back to Georgia and says, hey, why don't we try this again? And he made Georgians so upset that Governor John Adam Treutlen actually not only kicks him out of Georgia, but issues a warrant for his arrest and a reward for anyone who will arrest now Chief Justice of South Carolina Drayton, because he's going around trying to get us absorbed into South Carolina. We just threw off let me say that again. We are in the process of throwing off Great Britain. And furthermore, Georgia would shortly be invaded by Great Britain. We're not quite ready to become part of South Carolina. With that being said, Drayton leaves and never returns again. And as I mentioned before, he does end up going to the Continental Congress, but sadly, as a young man, catches typhus and passes away. So this is a brief overview of the life of William Henry Drayton. I hope you enjoyed it. I find the attempt to absorb or annex Georgia by South Carolina both fascinating and hilarious, and I hope you did too. So if you made it this far, you hear me stumbling on my words, hit like, and please subscribe. I put out videos about the American Revolution 7 days a week, short ones every morning about a different founder, and longer form ones Monday through Friday. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back with another founder for you tomorrow.